So thank you, Casey. Y'all like Casey? Was that good? Is that good? Thank you, Casey, and the entire team, and just awesome to be in worship together. So, well, here's the scoop. For the last several weeks, we've been in a series called How to Stay in Love, and we're particularly talking to married people. But if you're not married, there's still a lot I think that you can learn together as we've navigated our way through this series. And so, I'm just going to shoot straight with you. I love being in love. Like I love to talk about love. I love the effects of love. I love the journey of love. I love being married. And actually this year, in August, it'll be 19 years that the lovely and talented Mrs. Peterson and I have been together as husband and wife. And it's been an incredible, I love being married to her. And, I've found something, though, that through these 19 years, and here's the thing, like, when I talk about marriage, like, I always look to people who've been married the next wave, right? So who's been married 30 years? What have they done, right? What are they doing to keep them married? Who's been married 50 years? And who's been married 70 years? And I'm always asking these people, I spend time asking them, like, what are you doing? What have you done that's helped you to stay together for this long? And, one of the things we've said consistently throughout this series is that I believe that it's absolutely possible to stay happily married to one person for half a century or more, right? And the reason I believe that is because there are, in spite of what statistics say, there are a lot of people who are actually doing this. And I believe that we can make it happen. And if you've been through a marriage or you've been through two marriages, we'll start now. The person with whom you are currently living, the person with whom you are currently in love, start now and make it a half a century. What do you say? Is that a good deal? Can we do that? I think this is really, really important, and I think it can be done. Now, what we've said every week is this, and this kind of been the big idea, the revolving idea of this teaching series, and that's this. Love is a great idea, followed by a lot of hard work. So the idea of love is wonderful, right? I mean, we used to read fairy tales, and the prince would go to war, and he'd slaughter the thousands, and then he'd come home to his princess, and they would live happily ever after and rule the kingdom, and all would be well. And then we grew up, and girls started watching chick flicks, and dudes started watching war movies. But even in war movies, there's still a girl, isn't there? Like, there's always something about love. Like, guys just like to see somebody get punched in the eye before the kiss, right? That's just how we work. But love is a great idea. We all love the idea of love and being loved and giving love and receiving love. But this idea is always followed by a tremendous amount of hard work. Now, I will tell you this, that after 19 years of living with one lady and being faithful and living in integrity with one lady for 19 years, I have found someone that is easy to care for. Well, I mean, it's not always easy, but I'm always aware of the needs of this person. I'm always aware of this person's wants, always. I love this person a lot. I make an aggressive attempt to meet every single need that this person has. I will wake up early or go to bed late if that's what it takes to make sure that this person's desires are satisfied. I will absolutely inconvenience other people or even ignore other people to make sure that the needs of this one person are met. From time to time, I fight with this person, but I will always fight for this person. I'm in love with this person, and I'm always going to look out for the best interests of this person. You know who this person is? That guy. Huh? Now listen, that may not be a great picture, all right? But y'all have an ugly self too. And inside of every single one of us is this. It's like it comes down to this. I love me. I know what I want. I know what's important to me. I know what I desire. I know what I like. I know what I don't like. I mean, listen, I'm all about making sure I'm okay, and I'm not the only one who rolls like that. Can I get a witness? We all have one of these dudes inside of us saying, hey, it's about me. Listen, here's the truth. I'm a warrior when it comes to looking out for my own interests, right? I know what I want, and I will go to bat to make sure that those needs are satisfied. And again, I'm not the only person. Let's get rid of that. That's distracting. I'm sorry, y'all. But in this room, every single one of us has this person on the inside of us that says, I know what I want, I know what I need, I know what will satisfy me, I know what I desire, and we go to war for that, right? Now, here's the thing about my needs, my desires, my wants. They're obvious, right? I know what they are, and so it's easy and it's natural to pay attention to my needs and my interests and my desires, because it's like you live with this dashboard in front of you with these flashing lights that says, hey, you need food, or hey, you need a hug, or hey, you need some sex, or hey, you need a pay raise, or hey, you need some sleep, or hey, you just need to get away from the kids and watch Netflix for a while, or hey, all these needs on our dashboard. So we're always aware of these needs. Now, here's the thing. Happened to me, probably happened to you as well. We first start dating, we did things a little differently than we do the first few years of marriage. In fact, if you go on to, there's tons and tons of online dating services, but one of them is called Match.com, and they actually give, they take advice from various dating experts, and they say, hey, look, if you're into the dating game, here's some advice for you. And so what they did is they collected like some of the top tips for first dates, and they put them together, and I thought it might be interesting to compare what was to what is. Now think about this. If you're in this room and you're in a relationship, at one point you had a first date, right? And on that first date, something happened. Like, a little something on the inside, like, ooh. Right? And so let's just take just a moment. Let's look what the dating experts tell us. This is this is what you do on your first date. If you want to have a second date, these are the things you pay attention to. So let's just check it out. This is one of their top tips. Look what they say. Take the focus off me, myself, and I. On your first date, take your focus off me, myself, and I. Now, let me just read to you what they say. The best first date move for a guy is make sure she's comfortable. That's it. That's all that matters. If she's comfortable with you, she's going to let her guard down and trust you, which means you're both going to have a good time. So how do you make her comfortable? Chivalry helps. Opening doors, asking questions, paying the check are all ways of ensuring that she feels special. This is important. Taking care of those details shows you're interested in her as a person. Taking care of the details demonstrates that you're interested in her as a person. And this puts you way ahead of most of the men that she's going to date. Same advice for women. Think of him first. After all, it's easy to focus on what you get out of the date. Try considering what your date gets out of the date. Make him feel interesting. So smile, laugh, touch him on the arm. Any positive reinforcement will do. Guys just want to know that they're on the right track. If you ensure your date is having a good time on date 1, you'll generally be asked out for date 2. Is that not right? Like, you guys did all this. We all did this all stuff on the first date, didn't we? Because if you went on your first date and you just talked about me, I, mine, there probably wasn't a second date. But if you did the stuff right, if you did the stuff that Match.com talked about, you made her feel comfortable, you talked about her, you asked about her, you listened to her, you leaned across the table when she talked, you did all that stuff, you made him feel interesting, you giggled at his silly jokes, you made him feel engaged and interesting, there probably was date 2. That's what we did on our first date. See, when we first started getting together, the focus was not on me. The focus was on you. It was on him. It was on her. It was on his needs. It was on her needs, right? Their needs were the priority. They were the priority in that conversation, that relationship, and things were good. In fact, they were so good that you finally said, hey, this is going really good. I like how I feel when I'm with you. Let's do something permanent. Like, let's make this forever. Let's get married. And so you did. And then life started to happen. We've talked about this almost every week, but it's so important. Life started to happen. We were so in love, and everything was good and wonderful and perfect. And then life started to happen. You got a raise, or you got a promotion at work, and kids came along, and she decided she was going to go on to the next level of education, and all this stuff, and hobbies and friends, and before long, well, let me just show you this picture. First date, second date. So I was at a restaurant this weekend, and I actually saw this. I saw first date, second date. Like, this isn't the restaurant I was at, but first date, like, is so engaged and they're so happy. And sure, tell me more about your hobby. Right? And tell me that joke again. Right? I mean, they're so engaged, right? They're just amazing. Like, I can't stop looking into your eyes. And then after a while, somehow it turns into this. And I saw this weekend, the second date. Like, it's a man and a wife sitting at a table, and they're both just on their cell phones. Right? Something happened between the two, didn't it? Yeah. So, let me just stop and just ask for a second. Like, please don't answer this out loud, all right? But somewhere along the line, like, life happened and you stopped paying so much attention to him and you, sir, stopped paying so much attention to her and before long, it went from I want to talk about you to I want to talk about me, right? Is this how it went? Don't answer, but is this how it went out in your marriage? Like, have you found this to be true in your relationship? Like, it went from like, oh, I can't get enough of you to, we just quit talking so I can look at Facebook, you know? You may not say that out loud, but you know in your head sometimes. Now, I want to tell you something that's really, really important. You ready? Prioritizing me is a terrible relational choice. Prioritizing me will always be a terrible relational choice. I mean, have you ever been around someone who they only talk about themselves, they only think about themselves, they can't wait till you're done talking to tell you something about themselves? Like, they may hear what you want, but they'll do what they want. They may hear what you need, but they'll satisfy their need first, right? It's honestly like being around a toddler. I mean, toddlers are like this. It's me, mine, I want, I need. Now, there are lots of relationships in which one person is in a relationship with a toddler. Now, I'm an expert on toddlers. I have 6 children. And I also have an inner toddler that from time to time rears his head and says, I want to be about me. Me. And I just got to tell you this, men, this is really, really important. Men, hear me on this. We are particularly susceptible to this. Men have a toddler within us that dies very hard. We have a tendency to be about me, I, mine. And that's why the Bible says to us in Ephesians chapter 6, listen, this is important, ladies. Do not say amen. This will hurt our feelings. But listen, in Ephesians chapter 6, this is why the Bible says to us that husbands ought to love their wives like they love themselves. Because the Bible knows, St. Paul who wrote those words knows this. Men, if you pay attention to your wife like you pay attention to yourself, all of her needs will be met. Amen? It's the truth. Because men in particular have a tendency to pay attention to ourselves. We have this inner toddler that consistently rears his head that we have to pay attention to. And I'm finding in my relationship, and you've probably found in yours, that if your attention is always on you and your needs and your interests, there's going to be a problem. If my happiness is my target, there's going to be a problem. If her happiness is her target, there's going to be a problem. There's a guy named Zig Ziglar he's now deceased, but he has written prolifically, and he was a famous motivational speaker. He wrote a lot about marriage, etc. And this is what he said. He's spot on. Look what he says. He said, "It is impossible for only one of the partners to be happy." That's huge. Both will be happy, or neither will be happy. Without mutual respect, no marriage is going to endure and be happy. In other words, there's no way the husband is happy and wife's not. There's no way that wife's happy and husband's not. It's either both or neither. And he says, here's the key. Without mutual respect, in other words, if I'm not paying attention to you and you're not paying attention to me, if I'm not giving honor to you and you're not giving honor to me, this thing doesn't work. I mean, we may stay together, but there's no love. And who's interested in that? No. It's really easy to pay attention to yourself because your needs are on a dashboard right in front of your eyes and you see them all the time. You feel them all the time. But it's destructive. And if you're always prioritizing yourself in a relationship, it will destroy the relationship. And if we're not intentional and alert, it'll naturally happen, and your relationship will be loveless and empty, and it won't work. But there's really good news. Here's the good news. Your relationship is the result of choices that you've made. Now, honestly, most of life is like this. Like most of life is like this. What you have and who you are, in most instances, is the result of choices that you've consistently made over an extended period of time. Like financially. Like if you have money, it's a result of choices that you've made. If you're broke, it's probably the result of choices that you've made. Physically, if you're struggling with weight issues or whatever, most of the time, not every time. If you're sick, not all the time, but most of the time. If you're in shape, it's the result of choices that you've made. Your life, for the most part, is the result of choices that you've made. And so is your marriage. Think about this. There was a time in your relationship, in your marriage, where there was so much love that you couldn't keep your hands off each other. Remember that? Like, you were just like, oh, touchy-feely, like those kids in the mall, like, get a room, yeah, There was a time in your relationship when you were always talking to each other. I mean, some of you remember, listen, I actually remember this. I remember when we had a phone that was attached to the wall with a cord, and you had to walk into another room and close the door. Remember that? And there was a cord that ran throughout the house. And you did that, and you just talked on the phone like you couldn't talk enough, right? There was a time when that was true. There was a time when you would leave work early and you would skip out on your friends to make sure that you got to be together. There was a time. And there was lots of love because you made those kind of choices. You made choices that said, hey, I'm not going to be able to hang out with my friends tonight because I'm going to be with her. I'm not going to be able to spend extra time watching TV because I'm going to be talking with him. I'm not going to be able to do this because I'm going to be doing that, right? Choices. Lots of love because of the choices that you were making. Now listen, this is important. I'm going to tell you one choice that you consistently made that made everything work. If your relationship is working right now and you're in love and it's good and it's beautiful and all that, there's a choice that you're making consistently that makes that happen. And if you're not in love and love is not working in your relationship, there's a choice that you used to make that you're not making anymore. If you are in love or when you were in love, this is the choice that you made all the time, right? You looked at him or you looked at her and you said this, your needs are my target. Your interests are my target. Your desires are my target. Making you happy is my target. That's what you did when you were in love. And if your love is strong, that is what you're doing now. And you can plug like any word that you want to in here. Like you could, if end zone works for you, your needs are my end zone. Your needs are my goal. Your needs are my priority. But once upon a time, all of your energy and all of your efforts were engaged in meeting his needs or in meeting her needs. That was the target. And then life got busy. You got distracted. You got disheartened. Or something happened and the target moved. So the question here is then, how do we change this? How do we get back to you have the ability to be in love because you were once, right? How do we get there and how do we stay there? How do we stay together for 50 plus years in love? How do we do this? So, St. Paul nailed it in a letter that he wrote to a group of Christians in a little city called Philippi. Now, let me just say this as an aside. I think if you have Jesus living in your heart, if you're a Christian, you have the right and the responsibility to have the best marriage, period. Christians have the resources to have the best marriages, to have the best love, to have the most engaging and endearing relationships. That's the resource that we have. If you're a Christian, you have available to you all of the resources of God to have this incredible relationship, and I want to show you how. This is what St. Paul said. He wrote a letter to this little church of Philippi, and he said this. He said, is there any encouragement from belonging to Christ? And the obvious answer is sure, I get encouragement from being a Christian. Is there any comfort in his love? Well, yeah. Any fellowship together in the Spirit? Yeah. Are your hearts tender and compassionate? Well, they should be, right? He said, then make me truly happy by agreeing wholeheartedly with each other, loving one another, and working together with one mind and purpose. Like, this is what we do. We agree, we work, we love, we find solutions, we make this thing work. He said, don't be selfish. Don't try to impress others. Be humble, thinking of others as better than yourselves. And then he said this sentence right here. Look at this. Don't look out only for your own interests, but take an interest in others too. This is really important. Will you just read this with me again? Look what he says. Don't look out only for your own interests, but take an interest in others too. Now, I love what Paul did here, and I don't do this a lot. But when he wrote this, he didn't actually sit down and write, he didn't type it out on a Mac in English, okay? When he first wrote this, what he did was he had a pen and he wrote in a Greek letter, all right? He wrote in Greek letters. And this is this little phrase right here, when he says, don't look out, he actually used a little Greek word, and the word is skopeo. Now, it's the word from which we get our English word, scope. Right. Think about this. When we scope something, we're paying very close attention to it. Think microscope. When we scope something, we're very intently observing it. Think telescope. When we scope something, we're very engaged with and very focused on. Think periscope from a submarine. When we scope something, we're very, very engaged and there's hardly anything distracting us. Think scope on a gun. Now, hopefully that scope isn't pointing at someone with ill harm, right? But that is the idea of scope. Pay very close attention to. Be very focused on. There's also another kind of scope. You know what it is? Mouthwash. You know why I use scope mouthwash? Because I'm very intent on getting a kiss, right? Right? I'm very focused. That's what I want, right? And Paul says, listen, this is what I want you to do. Especially Christians. You should make their interest your focus, your target. You should be scoped in on what makes them tick. You should be scoped in on what makes them happy. You should be scoped in on, that's what I want you to do. And it really comes down to this. You used to do that. You can do that. And if you are in love, you are doing that. Here's what it is. Your needs are my target. I'm scoped in on you. I'm not looking at anything else. I'm focused exclusively on what makes you happy, on your interests, on your needs, on your desires. Your needs are my target. Listen, what we don't want to do is say, you are my target. That's not good, okay? Your needs are my target. Your needs are my focus. Now, through this series, I've been asking God to make this a reality in my heart. Because when I stand up here and teach this stuff, I want God to work in my heart and do this stuff in my marriage and do this stuff in my home as well. And so I've been praying and asking Him to make me alert to my bride's needs. And 2 weeks ago, man, I had an epiphany that rocked me to the core. And I saw a need that's been obvious that I just haven't seen it. And largely because I've been too busy clamoring about my own needs. But you know what I found interesting is when I begin to ask God, make me aware of her needs. Help me to really scope in on her needs and be really focused on her. He showed me something. It's amazing how it worked. And it wasn't like I had this epiphany while I was praying. You know where I was at? I was at the gym. I don't even know how it all came together, but I'm at the gym and all of a sudden, like, bing, this is a huge need in your wife's life. And I'm like, holy crap, it was amazing how God, and I would just say to you, all of you, if you begin to ask God to make you aware of your spouse's needs, you might be blown away what He reveals to you. And I'll tell you this, it's rearranged my energies. It's rearranged focus since I began to be aware of her needs. I actually began to see her in a different way. See, what I realized is that early on, I told her, I will meet your needs. I demonstrated to her, you can trust me, I will meet your needs. I will make your interests a priority. I will target, I will scope in on your desires. And she believed that. And then life got busy. And I got distracted. And my focus got moved away. Now, if you've been married long enough, you know this is the rhythm, right? You do really good and you're really focused, and then you get distracted and things move away. and then you have a wake-up call, and you move back, and you get really focused, and then you're really on target, and then you get distracted and move away. Listen, you may be in a season of distraction. Can I just encourage you to take these words to heart and to make this commitment to make your partner's needs your target? So let me do this. St. Paul's instruction to us is spot on. This is what he said. Don't look out only for your own interests, but take an interest in others too, particularly the person with whom you live, particularly your spouse. Pay attention to them. Now, what I want to do is I want to quickly show you two things that you can do to refocus your energy and refocus your efforts on your partner and bring back that loving feeling. Man, I wanted to sing right there, right? Bring back that loving feeling. Number one, pay attention to what you are paying attention. Like, what are the things that you are paying attention to? Pay attention to that. Where does your time go? Where does your energy go? Where does your focus go? What are you talking about? Like, when you're together with your spouse, who does most of the talking? And if it's her talking, are you actually engaged? Are you listening? Are you scoping in on? And if it's him talking, are you listening? Are you scoped in on? Are you engaged? I mean, Paul said, listen, here's what I want you to do. I want you to look out for the interest of others. And then the very next thing that he said, pay attention to the interests of others. And the very next thing he said was this: you must have the same attitude that, say it with me please, Christ Jesus had. In relationships in general, by the way, but we're talking about marriage, I want you to have the same attitude that Jesus Christ did. And then listen to what he says. Though he was God, he did not think of equality with God as something to cling to. In other words, though he walked into this relationship and he clearly had the upper hand, right? He didn't play that hand. He didn't play that hand at all. Here's what he did. He gave up his divine privileges and he took on the humble position of a slave. And he was born as a human being. When he appeared in human form, he humbled himself in obedience to God and died a criminal's death on the cross. In other words, Jesus came into this relationship with humanity. He clearly had the upper hand. He said, you know what, I'm not going to even pay attention to that. I'm simply here to serve. That's the attitude that Jesus had. And Paul said, this is what I want you to do. Husbands and wives and people in general, this is how we do love well. We disregard our own rights. We disregard our own interests. We disregard, you say, that's awful. You're right. I want to tell you something in just a minute how we go about doing that. But first, let me just say this. This is really, really important. Imagine what would happen in your home, in your marriage, in your relationship, if both of you begin to act like Jesus. If both of you begin to prioritize the needs of the other. Right? Man. If her greatest target was your interests, and if your greatest target was her interests, if your number one effort was all about making her happy, and her number one effort was all about making you happy, imagine the kind of home that would result from that. So the question I would say is this: to what or to whom have you been paying attention? Where do your energies go? Where's your focus? The truth is, we rarely stop long enough to ask this question. We're always so busy. But I just would encourage you, please, if you want to live in love, you have to ask this question. Where is my attention going? Here's what I've found. When I stop and ask that question, the answer is typically this: I think about me more than I think about anyone else. When I really stop and ask that question, think about it, usually the answer to this: I've been paying attention a lot to me. And the next thing that happens is I feel bad about that. Geez, I've been thinking a lot about me. It makes me feel awful. So what do I do? And I'm going to tell you something. Here's what you do, and this is the second step in restoring this love back in your family. And it's so simple, it's so practical, that my fear is that you might actually dismiss it. But I promise this works, because some of you in this room might actually be in a love deficit that's like the national deficit that we have in our economy, right? I mean, it's just overwhelmingly huge. You're like, I don't know how I'm going to get out of this hole. I'm going to tell you how if you'll listen. This is so important. You ready? Write one way per day to show love. You're like, that's not very important. It's hugely important. Let me show you why. How do you build a house? one brick at a time. That's how you build a house. No one brings in a wall of bricks and drops it. Doesn't happen like that. One brick, some mud. 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 Before long, you have this unbelievable, gorgeous home. But it started when somebody laid the first brick and then put a second brick on top of it and another brick and another brick and another brick. Now listen, this is important. I told you last week, but it works. I'm doing this in my relationship with Sherry. I've been doing it for about 6 months now. Every morning, I write down one thing I'm going to do to show my wife love that day. And it's not always huge. Maybe today I'm actually going to sit down for 15 minutes and listen. I'm going to put my phone away and listen. Maybe I'm going to rub her feet. Maybe I'm going to write her a note. Maybe I'm going to send her 5 texts throughout the day. Whatever. It's not always big, but this is the important thing. It's something every single day to demonstrate love. A couple weeks ago, I told you this, and it's really important. The love is not built by the extravagant things you do occasionally. It's built by the simple things you do daily. Like if you're a jerk 364 days a week or 364 days a year, and one day you take her out to a really nice restaurant, that's not going to cut it. But if you show up in her life and you show up in his life, and every day you do one thing, write it down. Do that one thing. And here's the thing. When you begin targeting her needs and you make a significant effort to meet her needs, and when you ladies make a significant effort to meet his needs, you will soon discover that you have a different relationship. He's changed. You've changed. Your relationship has changed, and love is back. It absolutely works. Now, St. Paul said, listen, here's what I want you to do. I want you to target the interests of others. Don't just be about yourself, be about them. I've told you how to do it. Write one thing down every day and do that one thing. And before long, it'll become a habit. It'll actually get easier to do more than one thing. St. Paul then said, look, really, you should just be like Jesus. Just quit thinking about yourself. Focus exclusively on them. But he didn't stop there. He wrote some words that I really needed to hear, because focusing on other people is hard for me, and it's probably hard for you. But St. Paul said this, look, work hard to show the results of your salvation, obeying God with deep reverence and fear. In other words, if you're a believer, we got to demonstrate this stuff. Take God seriously. He said, I want you to invest in the interests of others. Take him seriously. Be about that. Work hard at it. Work hard at your marriage. Remember, we said love is a great idea, followed by a lot of hard work. Work hard at it. But then he said this, and this is critical for every single person who's invited God into their lives and into their marriage. He said this, for God is working, where? In you, giving you the desire and the power to do what pleases him. This is huge, because some of you are in this room like, I can't do this. You're right, you may not be able to. But God says, listen, here's what happens. If you'll invite me in, I will help you do this. I will help you dig out of the deficit that you've created with your choices. I'm a resource for you if you will invite me in. Remember, we've said consistently, love is a spiritual thing. If you're going to do spiritual things, you need spiritual help. And God is all about that. If you will open up your heart and your mind and your marriage to him, it's huge. And he will help you do what does not come naturally, which is making other people's interests your target. So you have some choices to make. Like, who are you going to target in your marriage? Will your happiness, will your needs, will your interests, will your dreams be the target? Or will her interests and dreams and desires and needs be your target? If you choose you know what's going to happen. I'm telling you, you know this. Love runs out. You don't make it. Or if you do make it, you wish you hadn't have, because it'll be miserable. And if you choose your partners, you know this. It's not always going to be easy. And you're going to go through cycles and seasons and rhythms where you have to ask God to refocus you. But God has said, I will help you. I am in you. I will create these desires, and I will give you the power to do these things if you'll let me help you. So I just encourage you, as we move out of this series and into another set of conversations over the next few weeks, to continue to pay attention to those things which you're paying attention to. What is getting your focus? What gets your energy? And then just start writing down one thing every day. Maybe it's on a little yellow Post-it note, or maybe it's on your hand, or maybe you have a notebook that you write. Somewhere, write down one thing every day you're going to do to demonstrate love and honor and respect to your spouse, and then watch what happens. Now, at the beginning of this series, I encourage every person who's in a relationship and every person who wants to be in a relationship to take an action step that would take your love to the next level. And we encourage you to do any number of things, but we gave you 4 ideas. One was to schedule a weekend away, all right? Great thing to do. The other was, if you can't do that, read a book together. We have books out there. This will be the last weekend they'll be out there. I encourage you to pick one of those up and read it together as a couple. Invest in your marriage. Schedule a meeting with a counselor. If you don't know who to go to, we have several counselors who we recommend back there. You can find all their information back there in that back room. And the 4th was to get baptized together. And this is essentially saying out loud to God, to our church, to family and friends, that God is in our home, and He is leading our marriage, and He is the one who is giving us the desire and the power to make this thing work forever. Today we have a couple who's doing that. I'm super excited about this. Greg and Beth, if you guys want to come on out. So I've known Greg for a good number of years, and if you guys want to come on over here so we can. I've known Greg for a good number of years, and I've watched the evolution of his life, and I've recently met Beth, and just, about 6 months ago or so, I had the opportunity to marry these guys, and I've watched God do this incredible work in their lives, and just take you from one place to another, and it's so fun to watch the evolution of your faith and this relationship. And so when they reached out and said, I would like to be baptized today, I'm like, yeah, that's amazing. So yes, absolutely. And so what I'd like to do, first of all, is just give you guys an opportunity to say something, if there's something in your heart, or to identify any one family or friends or whomever has played a critical role in your life in the development of your faith. And then we're going to baptize you, just celebrate like crazy. I'm going to invite the band to come on up. We're going to celebrate when you guys are done. So if there's anything either one of you would like to say, this would be a good time to do it.
Really, just, since you married us, I just want to take any step, any way to keep negativity, keep the evil away from our relationship. Just do what I can do to make this one happy. I love her with all my heart, and if it means getting baptized, if it means reading a book, if it means whatever together, I'm willing to do it. So.
And I just want to thank, I've grown up in church, and I know we talked a little bit, about my journey to get here and be with Greg, and there was a period of time where I struggled with where I was in my faith, and I just wanted to thank the church, and thank you for the word that you share, because it's really spoke to my heart, and it's helped us really focus on each other and bringing God into our home and putting God first. We have a blended family of 5, so we very much can relate to when you talk about 6 children. So we just I felt led to do this and to set this example for our kids, and just strengthen our marriage in any way we can, and knowing that God is going to be what does that. So. Very good.
Very good. Well, inviting God in is always a big idea, so a great idea. So very good. Well, guys, here's what's going to happen. We're going to go ahead and step on in. I'm just going to warn you right now, it's like polar, but this is good for your relationship. Athletes do this all the time.
Oh yeah, I set sun, right?
So here's what's going to happen today is Greg, you and I are going to baptize your bride, all right? And then when you're going to stand up, and you and I together are going to baptize Greg, okay? So if you want to go ahead and just have a seat. So we're going to take you back over, so you just want to go ahead and sit down. So Greg, you can put your hands right here. Beth, we baptize you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Yes. Greg, sir, we baptize you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Hey, man.